Hello, my name is Victoria Tate, and I am the Education for Sustainability Coordinator at the Global Sustainability Institute, which is a research institute based at Anglia Ruskin University. I'm really delighted to be hosting today's talk about fast fashion and sustainable fashion industry and why we need to transition to a sustainable fashion industry as quickly as possible. I'm really pleased that on today's call, I'm joined by two students from Anglia Ruskin University. And I was working closely with these two students prior to the COVID-19 outbreak to set up Anglia Ruskin's very first Sustainable Fashion Week. And I'm also really pleased that we're joined today by two artists, one of whom is working directly in the fashion industry. And they're going to be talking about how we can actually do things differently from within the industry itself. So to get things started, we're going to have a quick round of introductions. So Kate, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Victoria. My name is Kate Janina, and I'm a third-year law student at Anglia Ruskin University and the president of Anglia Law Society. And I got involved with Sustainable Fashion Week because it was a really great opportunity to learn a bit more about this topic that, to be honest, I knew very little about before. And when I first talked to Victoria about the idea behind Sustainable Fashion event, I was shocked, I was scared, and I started immediately thinking about my own consumption habits, about the way I live, the way I shop in general. And because I wanted to learn more about how fast fashion actually affects the society, the environment, I volunteered to help Victoria to project manage the event and to look for speakers and workshop hosts. And now I'm here. Yeah, Katie, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Katie Sharples. I'm currently studying a Master's in Marketing at Anglia Ruskin. In my later slides, I'll discuss why I decided to take part in the event.
Hi, my name is Alice Potts. I'm a sustainable material inventor and a biofabrication fashion designer. I've been working in the fashion industry for the last 8 years. In the last 6 years, I've been working on developing materials through biology and science. Over to you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Strachan. I'm a third year fine art student at Anglia Ruskin University, and I also work with Victoria at the Global Sustainability Institute. The reason I'm involved is because sustainability is really at the heart of my practice. It's what motivates me and why I do what I do.
Okay, thank you so much for those wonderful introductions. So I've switched my video off for this next part of the presentation because I'm actually going to be running through a quick quiz with you all. So when I started doing research into the fast fashion industry, I came across lots of facts and figures about the damage and the impact that fast fashion was having on both people and planet. And I thought rather than reading all those out to you in lists and PowerPoints, it would be more interesting to put this into a quiz. So the way this will work is that there are 8 questions and I will go through each question individually, and you'll have a chance at the end of each question to pause your video to think about what the answer might be, to write that down, and then move on to the next question. And at the end of all of it, I'll go through the answers one by one so you have a chance to see if you were actually correct with your answers. Okay, so to get started, question number 1. How many litres of water are used in the full product cycle of a pair of 501 Levi's jeans? And when I say full product cycle, what that means is both the production, but also the kind of the washing of the jeans and the maintenance of the jeans during their full lifetime. So is the answer A, 1,024 litres, B, 3,781 litres, or C, 5,678 litres? So you can go ahead and pause your video now and have a think about the answer. Okay, question number 2. Which industry of the 3 listed below contributes the most to global carbon emissions annually? Is it A, aviation, B, fashion, or C, shipping? And I've awarded an extra bonus point here if you can actually say what percentage it contributes to global carbon emissions each year. Okay, question number 3. What percentage of material used to produce clothing is recycled into new clothing at the end of its life? Is it A, less than 1%, B, 5%, or C, 11%? Question number 4. How much of Bangladesh's export economy do textiles constitute? Is it A, 45%, B, 62%, or C, 83%? Okay, question 5. In 2013, how many people were killed when the Rana Plaza garment factory collapsed in Bangladesh? Was it A, 892, B, 1,134, or C, 1,979? Question 6. Which country in Europe is the biggest consumer of fast fashion? Is it A, Italy, B, Spain, or C, the UK? And question 7. How many people are directly employed by the fashion industry worldwide? Is it A, 60 million, B, 75 million, or C, 90 million? And for the last question, which of these brands is least sustainable according to a recent Environmental Audit Committee report? Is it A, ASOS, B, Primark, C, Burberry, D, Marks and Spencer's, or E, Boohoo? Okay, so that was the last question in this mini quiz. Hopefully you'll all manage to write some answers down. And if you haven't, obviously you can just go back through the recording. So now we're going to move on to the answers. So question 1, the answer was B. Around 3,781 litres of water are used in the full product cycle of a pair of Levi's jeans. And 49% of this is actually used to grow the cotton. Question 2, the answer again was B. And the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of annual global carbon emissions. So actually this is more than both the aviation and shipping industries combined. And if current trends continue, the fashion industry's greenhouse gas emissions will surge by 50% by the year 2030. Question 3, the answer was A. It's less than 1% of material used to produce clothing is recycled into new clothing at the end of its life. And around 300,000 tons of fashion went to landfill or was burned last year. Question 4, the answer is C. Textiles contribute over 83% of Bangladesh's export economy. And around 20 million of Bangladesh's 160 million population actually work in the textiles industry. Question 5, the answer is B. In 2013, 1,134 people died when Rana Plaza collapsed. And the tragedy was described by unions as a mass industrial homicide. Question 6, the UK is the biggest consumer of fast fashion in Europe. 1 in 3 young women in Britain considers a garment worn once or twice to be old. And that came from a survey that was done, I think, 2 years ago. Question 7, the fashion industry is the 3rd largest manufacturing industry in the world, directly employing some 75 million people worldwide throughout its value chains. So the answer for that one was B. And the final question, the answer is E. In a recent Environmental Audit Committee inquiry, Boohoo and Misguided were found to be 2 of the least sustainable fashion brands in the UK. Okay, so hopefully that's given you a bit of a flavour of the impacts that the fast fashion industry is having on the environment, but also on people and their living and working conditions. When I was doing research into the fast fashion industry and fashion as a whole, really, I came across this quote from the Centre for Sustainable Fashion based at the University of the Arts London. And I think this is a really powerful quote, and I think it really sort of gets to the heart of the problem that we have currently with the fashion industry. So it's not trying to suggest that fashion is an evil industry that we should entirely get rid of, but that the way that we're currently consuming fashion is completely unsustainable and really has to change. And I think some of the important points that it draws out are particularly around fashion as a livelihood, and obviously going through those quiz questions and seeing that 20 million people in Bangladesh work in the fast fashion industry, and 75 million people worldwide are employed in that industry. Obviously, it is a really important sort of source of income for many people around the world. And I think the other part that I like in this is also that aspect about identity, and the fact that fashion is a means of expressing ourselves, expressing our own identities, and that's really important. And I don't think that should be lost. It's just about sort of the system as a whole and the way that it's currently not working to anybody's advantage, really. And actually, coronavirus has kind of emphasized this more than anything else, to my mind. So I recently came across quite a few articles in the BBC, The Guardian, basically saying that because of coronavirus, factories in Bangladesh and Pakistan have essentially been shut down. The workers have been sent home without any pay, despite the fact that many of them have actually already produced clothing for Western companies. So there's now clothing sitting in factories in Bangladesh that is likely going to go to landfill because it can't be sold here anymore. And I think this quote from a factory owner in Bangladesh is just really powerful, saying essentially, if the virus doesn't kill his workers, then starvation will. And I think it kind of gets to the heart of the problems with the fast fashion industry as it stands currently, in that whilst it does provide a sort of source or a means of livelihood for many people, that job, the wages that they get it's so precarious already that really, people are in a very, very vulnerable situation. And even something as unprecedented as coronavirus kind of exposes that immediately. So I think, that's where we really need to be making changes. And I included this slide because the field that I work in education for sustainability, one of the main things that we promote is around systems thinking. So the fashion industry in itself is a very complex system, and if you're trying to solve one aspect of it, you kind of going to fail because it's sort of complicated and things are intertwined and it's on a global scale and it involves lots of different parts. So for example, with coronavirus, we've obviously seen that if fast fashion dries up, then a lot of people lose their jobs. And in Bangladesh, that means that a lot of people are currently starving and going without any food. So we can't sort of stop consuming fast fashion immediately tomorrow. We need to think about this in a more holistic, systemic way. And that's what systems thinking is really all about. So we need to think about how we can provide a just transition, a fair transition for those people who work in the fast fashion industry. We need to think about what they could potentially be doing instead of fast fashion, or how we can kind of rethink this whole system. And to do so, we need to think in different ways. We can't use the same sort of tools that we used previously that got us into these problems, these complicated problems, to try and get us out of them. And that's what systems thinking is all about, really. It's also about trying to understand the relationships between things and how something that seems perhaps quite unrelated can actually have a huge impact on something else. And just as a little example of what that could look like, I have a slide here about the sea ice albedo climate feedback loop, which sounds quite complicated, but is actually really simple. And basically, all this is an example of that interrelationship between things and things having an impact in ways that we might have not expected. So essentially, as the planet warms up, sea ice melts, and as the sea ice melts, it exposes more dark water. And what was happening previously when there were larger amounts of sea ice is that the heat was being reflected off of the ice. So imagine on a warm summer's day, you're not going to go out wearing a black jumper because it would just absorb the heat and you'd boil. But that's basically what's happening here. So the kind of the sea ice was helping to reflect that heat back, whereas the darker water is actually absorbing the heat, and that then causes warming to increase at an even faster rate. But if you just thought about sort of sea ice melting, you wouldn't necessarily have imagined that there could be these other deeper relationships. So systems thinking is really about trying to think about these interconnections. Okay, so I'm now going to move on to talking about our Sustainable Fashion Week, and I'm going to bring back Kate and Katie to do so, and they're going to talk a bit about how they were involved as well. So our Sustainable Fashion Week, we had planned to hold this from the 30th of March to the 3rd of April 2020. Obviously, because of the coronavirus pandemic, this wasn't possible. But in the lead up to the event, we had about 10 student volunteers from a whole range of different disciplines, which I think goes back to that kind of idea of systems thinking, so drawing on different perspectives and trying to understand things not through silos, so not just from one disciplinary perspective, but through multiple disciplinary perspectives. We also had 15 fashion design students who were involved because they were actually making sustainable designs that we hoped to display as part of a catwalk event. We had invited in 3 external speakers. We had about 5 internal speakers. We had workshops, keynotes, and to finish the week off, we'd planned a sustainable fashion catwalk. So I'm now going to hand over to Kate and Katie to talk about this in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, hello, Victoria again. Thank you, and I'm going to be talking about what we had planned for the Sustainable Fashion Week, and then I'll hand over to Katie to describe what we are doing now since the coronavirus pandemic prevented us from having the event itself. So for the Sustainable Fashion Week, as a keynote speaker, we invited Helga Henji, who is a human rights and international law academic and practitioner. She agreed to talk to us about the catastrophic impact that the fast fashion industry has on the environment and on human rights in developing countries. The issue with fast fashion that she wanted to discuss particularly was connected to the question of what happens when global companies and corporations transfer their production to countries like Bangladesh or India or even China. Statistics currently show that fast fashion produces 97% of our clothes overseas, which means that the industry exploits cheap labor in developing countries, where the rights of workers are literally non-existent and environmental standards are very low. This, of course, causes not only huge damage to the environment, but also gives rise to human rights abuse. The most stark example of fast fashion impact on human rights in developing countries is probably the cry for help, which was found in the pocket of the trousers bought from a very famous brand. And the cry for help was by a Chinese worker who was exploited as a slave by a fast fashion giant. This is something to think about and something that Helga wanted to discuss. Next, we invited Beatriz Acevedo, who is an ARU artist academic, and she's very passionate about sustainability and about sustainable management. Beatriz designed a really fascinating rota workshop and swap event where she would encourage students to upcycle and mend their clothing and create work of art from them. By showing the attendees the ways to recreate something new from the clothes that they have probably had for a very long time, she wanted to change our buying habits and change our perception of fashion in general. At this event, she also wanted to encourage the guests to audit how sustainable they are and teach us a couple of methods for assessing our sustainability. We also invited a representative from British Heart Foundation, Tim Reeves, who planned to talk about fast fashion industry and the journey of the clothes in British Heart Foundation. As he said, British Heart Foundation works with universities to help them achieve their sustainability goals, and thousands of pounds per year are raised by the universities donating unwanted clothing and other items left by students to British Heart Foundation. This money not only helps fund the vital health research, but also prevents tons of garments from going to landfills, which is amazing. And at the concluding day of the Sustainable Fashion Week, Wendy Moody, who is a deputy head of art and design at Anglia Ruskin, planned to talk about our buyer and wearing experience and about psychological preferences in clothing design. She wanted to talk to us about her fascinating research, where buying new clothes has shown to be used as a tool for self-development, and she also wanted to explain how our need for change, our desire for something new, something novel, and wish to have something fun in our lives helps drive fast fashion. With links to sustainability, she wanted to explain how we as wearers can re-experience our own clothing without the need to actually buy or waste them. And the highlight of the week and the closing event was due to be a catwalk featuring work by our fashion design students, as Victoria said, who are going to present their sustainable outfits made of recycled wedding clothes that were donated to us by a local wedding boutique called The Tailor's Cat. Two other sustainable fashion initiatives, namely the New Wardrobe and the Serpentine Swap, had also agreed to provide us with a number of pre-loved outfits to demonstrate that there is no need to buy new clothes to look fresh or fashionable, and you can actually swap with like-minded individuals or even buy vintage or secondhand. So this is all from me about what we had planned for the Sustainable Fashion Week, and I'm now handing over to Katie to explain what we're currently doing due to the pandemic situation.
Thank you. So to start with, I'm just going to briefly discuss one of the main reasons I got involved with the event. At the same time Victoria came into my lecture as she was asking for help for the event, I noticed an increase of posts on social media surrounding the importance of sustainability, the effects that it had. This was mainly through influencers and brands who were bringing out products. This really interested me as I was obsessed with fast fashion brands, buying from them, the accessibility I had to them. But I soon learned through this event and just research the effects that this has, which is displayed on the slide in front of you and what Victoria and Kate have just touched on. One of the main things that I took away from it is that you shouldn't feel guilty from buying from fast fashion brands, but we'd like to help you give other alternatives which ultimately last longer for you and just healthier options. This is where our social media for the event takes place. So now I'm going to touch on the social media aspect for the event. As Kate has just discussed what's going to happen, these events obviously had to be postponed until after lockdown. However, we are sharing a series of interviews with the guest speakers via ARU social media channels. These interviews are uploaded monthly, usually on the 11th of each month. So if you're interested in this, follow ARU on social media. Due to Corona, obviously, the social media side has been a bit delayed. However, we are still getting this running and we will be sharing lots of content for you. Some of this content would be how to become more sustainable in general, leading and growing sustainable brands, fashion ideas. They're just to name a few things. The post will not just be like fashion orientated, it will cover a wide spectrum so everyone can take part. Just these little things can make such a big difference in the grand scheme of things. So just like social media gave me more awareness on sustainability, we would like to do the same for our audience.
Wonderful, thank you, Kate and Katie. So before we move on to Alice and Sarah, who are going to talk a bit about what we can actually do differently within the fashion industry, we quickly, first of all, wanted to provide a bit of what we've called an antidote to unboxing or to fashion hauling. So when I first started finding out a bit more about the fashion industry, one of the things that most struck me was that there were lots of videos of people sort of promoting themselves and promoting different companies as they tried on a whole range of different clothing that they'd been sent. And I remember sort of finding this quite shocking. And so I thought it would be quite nice to actually to showcase how important clothing can be, and not this sort of disposable item, but something that you care about, something that you love, something that you cherish, that's part of your life, that's part of this kind of identity that you have, and is closely linked to who you are, really. So myself, Kate and Katie have each chosen an item of clothing that's important to us, and we're just briefly going to talk about that now. So the one that I've chosen is the one that I'm actually wearing right now, as you can see. And here, this is me wearing it in 2016 on a trip that I took with my partner to Lisbon, and in 2017 with my partner, not our children, I'll just point out, a friend's children. But obviously these are both two quite special occasions for me. So this trip that I took to Lisbon, that was the first time I'd been there, and it was the first time I went with my partner as well. And the event in 2017 was a christening, so again it was quite an important occasion for me. And the top has been there for both occasions, and I actually got this top back in 2014. I got it in a vintage shop in Folkestone in Kent, and the vintage shop basically sourced their clothes from all across the world, and they were quite secretive about where they got their clothing from as well. So there were 4 women who ran it, and each one sourced their items individually, but they wouldn't really tell me where they got stuff from. So it was always fun going in, because you didn't really have any idea where stuff was from, what was going to be in there the next time you went in. So it was a great shop, and I really love this top, as you can see. Okay, so over to you.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yeah, so as Victoria, I am also wearing the same top that I'm wearing in the pictures. And I bought this top in 2016 when I was first going to my first university in Russia. And I bought it from H&M, and because I really love the quality, I really love the color, and I thought, well, I could wear it to the university, and I can probably wear it for quite a long time, so like for a year-ish. But of course, I didn't expect that I'll be still wearing it here 4 years after. I ended up wearing this top not only to my university, but to my first work placement in Russia, which was amazing to get, and I was really happy when I got it. Then I wore it to my holiday in Abkhazia, which is near the Black Sea, and which was a really amazing holiday. And it filled my soul with such a joy and lightness and fun that I had very good memories connected to this top. And maybe it sounds weird, but I really feel very light, and I feel very happy every time I wear it. But it all added up when I took it with me when I moved to the UK for the first time, so in 2018. And I took this top with me, and I wore it when I went to London for the first time in my life, and when I went to see the Phantom of the Opera, which is my favorite musical, also for the first time in my life. So the happiness was just overwhelming, and every time when I wear this top, I can feel the same emotions, and I feel really light, I feel really joyful, and I can't get rid of it. I can't throw it anywhere, so I keep it stored on a very far shelf in my wardrobe just to wear when I have really nice occasion. Maybe, of course, I don't wear it to go out, but when I just want to feel comfortable, when I'm going with my friends or when I'm going to a cafe, I want to wear it. Today is my submission deadline, so I'm wearing it because I'm really happy that I've done all of it, and it makes me feel very lightheaded. It makes me feel very, very happy about myself every time I wear it. So yeah, that's my little story. Katie, over to you then.
Yeah, so this is me when I went to Budapest. It was in winter. It's from Topshop, but I actually bought it on Depop, and Depop's like my backup. If I find anything that's too expensive, I always go on Depop. And it's such a good way just to keep using clothes instead of rebuying them constantly. So it's actually something I didn't think I'd like or I'd get much wear out of, but over winter I was constantly wearing it. My friends constantly were wearing it too. And it's just a different style of jacket. It's so versatile and something that I'll constantly get wear out of. Yeah. Unfortunately, I haven't got it on today because it's just too hot.
Just not winter.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Not cold enough.
Kate and I have definitely gone for lighter options.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Kate and Katie. So I'm now going to hand over to Alice and Sarah, who are going to talk about what can be done to make changes from within the fashion industry.
Hi, so I've introduced myself at the beginning. I'm Alice Potts, and I sort of have gone into this sort of role of biofabrication and working on creating my own sustainable fabrics sort of within fashion. But to give you sort of like a background of where I've come from and how I've got to the point I have, like my background comes from a mixture of science, mathematics, women's wear and accessories, and I've previously for the last 8 years worked within sort of fashion realm, I guess. And I've sort of worked alongside and done freelance projects with companies like Adidas, Nick Knight, Marks and Spencer, done stuff with the V&A, and sort of really broadly sort of pushed the work I do. But like my main focus is a sort of very new way of thinking and a new sustainable movement, which is called bio design, which falls in the same as like biomimicry and biosynthetic materials. But bio design is basically a new way of designing, either sort of conceptually or physically, using waste products, which is a new way of thinking, or basically copying what a material is. And so I've been learning this through my practice for the last 6 years and have been creating my own materials from biology. So for me, it's been a massive, important learning curve of how I can make an impact in the production and sustainability of fashion, because a lot of materials are man-made on a plastic base and aren't actually recyclable. And I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of what is a sustainably sourced material, because even cotton is heavily bleached. And I wanted to sort of tackle the problem from the forefront. So most thing I'm really heavily recognized is for my sweat crystallization process. So I developed, along with scientists at Imperial College in London, a way that I could collect people's sweat and basically extract out the salts, lactic acids, and really compress them to make their old objects last longer. So it was a very visual indication of the sweat they put into something. And so I've got like a little example. So this was one of the ballet shoes that I worked with for 6 months with the ballet dancers at Royal Ballet in London. So each one grew from their sweat individual to that person, and it was a really groundbreaking thing at the time and really exciting. And then during the coronavirus period, like I also work on bioplastics, which is basically a plastic-like material made out of biological matter. So a lot of the stuff I make is out of seaweed. And so through all of this, I've been trying to work out and question sort of the system way of thinking and thinking about how and why we do what we do. So a lot of my materials I make at the moment are not, they degrade within about 1 to 2 years. And so that's been the really biggest thing, is for me to challenge not only the fashion industry but the consumer about how long we really rely on having a product. And it's been like one of the most challenging things. But I think what I've really enjoyed is that sort of new disciplinary from the body to the garment. And I think it just is this whole new thing which is going along, and there's like an amazing mixture of brands which have also started looking at synthetically replicating biology, such as Bulk Threads, who use synthetically replicated spider's web to make their knit. There's Mycelico, which make mycelium, which is a mushroom-based leather. You have Pinaplex, who make pineapple leather. And there's this, it's a really exciting movement forward into this whole new idea of what sustainable fashion can be, and how we can start actually physically in the future maybe growing our own materials which are naturally sourced and completely eco-friendly. But yeah, so that's my sort of background and sort of what I work on. So over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Alice. So yeah, I, as an artist, am inspired and motivated through sustainability. So most of my work is environmentally more, what's the right word? Motivated, and I work a lot with materials. So Alice and I have been talking a lot about materials, and about our concerns about the sort of materials that we use, and certainly sustainability challenges me as an artist, because my kind of preference, or my what I feel grounded with and what I enjoy is with ceramics, and ceramics aren't necessarily the most sustainable kind of material in the world. They're a natural material, but as a civilization, we fire them, and then once vitrified, they're in the world a lot longer than we are. So it's something that I think about a lot, that I'm leaving behind all these objects that that are going to outlive me. So I've been using a lot more kind of fluid and porous kind of materials, so things like sound and water, and thinking about how they as materials are much more sustainable, in as far as I can recycle them better. Ceramics are recyclable, you know, I can reclaim the materials that I use, as long as I don't fire what it is that I've produced. So I can take it all the way to being bone dry and smash it up and turn it back into kind of clay. And I recover all my scraps and all my kind of like offcuts to do that. But it's nice to feel that I'm working with something that is much more kind of sustainable. So yeah, Alice and I have been talking lots about materials.
I think it's what's been really, really interesting is, I think, sort of what me and Sarah have discussed in the past, is that I think there's not, what's exciting is there's not a completely correct way of being sustainable, and that there's so many different new ways, starting from upcycling, recycling, biodesign, a couple of others which I'm probably missed off the top of my head. But I think what's like the most important message for me is that I don't think it's always, I think we always need to stop thinking, which I was sort of talking about Sarah about, that there's an either or option. Like, I think at the moment what the best thing for us to do is like look at how we can upcycle and recycle the materials that are already in our world, because at the end of the day, especially for me who makes bioplastics, like my bioplastics are biodegradable, but there's still 79% of the plastic in the world which is not being recycled, which is just a landfill. And I think I read the other day that every second there's like 8 tons of a truck of plastic being chucked into the ocean nearly every day. And I think that's like the biggest thing, is like, how do you work and integrate? And like, I'm sure like you've learned a lot about like the importance of like how a material works, and also collaborating and using other knowledge than just from one discipline.
No, absolutely. And I think in fashion, it's something that kind of it I guess links back to what Kate and Katie was talking about, and Victoria, about identity, and how, you know, fashion can still be important to you. It's important to your identity, but you can just make a few more decisions in a different way that perhaps means that you focus more on the identity side and less on the kind of fast side.
I think they're like one thing that I've always said, and like still to this day like truly believing, because there's a lot of disciplines that I've sort of worked with and worked along, but for me, like, there's a lot of negativity which is held around fashion, and I don't think it's, in terms of sustainability, the consumer or the designer's fault. Like, I think it ends up going in a complete circle. But for me, fashion has always been a bit further behind in terms of technology than a lot of other industrial companies. But I think what that gives fashion is that we have like a massive advantage in terms to move forward more sustainably than a lot of other companies have for, like, to go from a heavy technology base and then backwards into a more eco-friendly thing. And so that's why I think like the education and the understanding of what sustainability means, what our clothing means, and most importantly, the transparency of where our clothes come and are produced from is like the biggest and most important thing. But it's like I was saying as well about food, like there's a very close correlation between the both of them. And I think it's, especially with the COVID happening now, the next choices we make as an individual is what's really important.
Fantastic. So we're now going to go back to Kate, who's going to tell us about what you can do now to actually make changes.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, I'm not a sustainable fashion expert like Sarah or Alice or Victoria, so I'll be just speaking as a person who started to worry about being sustainable very, very recently. And as I think everyone can say, the transition from being unsustainable to sustainable can't happen overnight. It takes time to understand, it takes time to think about some things you can do. And what I can say is there are some things that you can start doing right now, and it will actually help you be more sustainable in the long run. So first, of course, you can just buy less. So you can consider, before going to a shop, you can consider if you really need new clothes, or if you're just going to shopping because you feel tired or you feel stressed, or you feel that you need to reward yourself for a big achievement, or if you actually need a new outfit because you have to go to an event and you have nothing to wear. You can start a journal or just think before you go in, why are you going it, why are you doing it, because to me it really helps me understand, do I really need this thing, or am I just trying to, I don't know, let my mind wander for a bit and go to, I don't know, the closest shop just to see what I can get. And what I realized is before you're actually buying, you can go shopping in your own wardrobe. So you can look in your wardrobe, you can see what you already have there. If there's anything you can wear differently from what you used to do, like put a new scarf with a dress, or put different trousers with a short, and maybe you will look completely different even to yourself. And then after you've shopped in your wardrobe in your house, think whether you really need to go out and to buy that new top or something, or if it's just, you know, just a desire which can easily go away. And if you don't have anything to wear and you really have nothing in your wardrobe, then you can talk to your friends and you can borrow from them, or you can swap with them. I think it helps you feel like you're wearing something new, but you're not actually contributing to the fast fashion and you're not actually buying anything. So you're also not wasting money. And if your friends have nothing to borrow, then you can use platforms like New Wardrobe to swap with individuals in the area. And I think it would be a really good opportunity as well. Another way to reduce buying is to make sure that your clothes actually last a bit longer. So all you need to do is to wear them carefully, so don't run around in your newly bought dress. Wash them at the correct washing machine cycle, and it is also a good idea to learn how to mend your clothes, because it I think for me it's very relaxing. Like I really like all the things that I can do with my hands. For me, it's a DIY style, but it also helps your clothes last much longer than they would have done before without mending. If you cannot really swap or mend or upcycle, you can try and buy new used clothes. So you can buy vintage or secondhand. You can find a nice vintage or secondhand shop and enjoy browsing them for really beautiful outfits, which you will adore. I can say that I have lots of clothes from charity shops, and I usually find their quality much better than in like fashion giants, because they're actually a bit older, so they're from different generation, where I think the quality of clothes stood a bit higher than just the fashion bit of it. So I really enjoy shopping in vintage shops, and I think, as Victoria said, her outfit was also vintage, so it gives you this feeling of something new, something exciting. And if you're still buying new clothes, if you don't have any other choice, or if you really need something new, then try to buy them for quality, for function, for versatility, so that you can actually use them for a long time and enjoy wearing them. So not like you wear them twice and you think, well, I can't wear it for anything else because that's it. But you can actually use them with something else, put a new, as I said, put a new scarf, put a new trousers, and you'll look as beautiful as you would with the new clothes. And to do it, I think it's really good. It's really interesting to try the 30 wears challenge. So the idea is that you only buy an item of clothes if you really know that you will wear it. So before you buy it, you think, will I wear it a minimum of 30 times? If the answer is yes, then you buy it. If not, then, well, just don't. And the last tip is, I think what we all do and should do, is rather than put your clothes in the bin, which will actually mean that they will just go into landfill or somewhere else and contribute to the environmental damage, you can just donate them to charity shops. And then, as British Heart Foundation example shows, they still find a way to use it somewhere rather than just let them go into the landfill. So I think these are just a few tips, but if you start doing it right now, I really think you will feel better. And for me, I think you start feeling more creative because you're thinking about what to do with something that you already have. So especially in the lockdown, it's really great for DIY. You can just mend all your clothes that you have in your wardrobe for ages. Yeah, thank you, Victoria.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kate. That's really useful. I think I'm definitely going to try the 30 wears challenge.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
So if you have any questions for us about our Sustainable Fashion Week or about changes that are happening within the fashion industry, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. So for the Sustainable Fashion Week, the best person to contact is Kate Zanina. And if you want to know about the social media around the Sustainable Fashion Week, then please do contact Katie. And for anything happening within the fashion industry, Sarah and Alice are the best people to contact. Thank you for watching.